Hello everyone, I'm Andy,
And I'm Mark.
and once again we're under the gun because Mark got the dates all mixed up and now I have to finish before I've hardly started.
Well, that's not quite true. I'm sure we said that it was this Sunday.
No, not this Sunday, the following Sunday. But anyway, we might not be able to do it because I couldn't track down where that recording went. It's fucking ridiculous. I looked everywhere.
So it's just disappeared, you're saying?
No, I mean, I've got it. I've got a copy of it, but I couldn't find it on my YouTube channel, on Strange Stuff Podcast YouTube channel, on the YouTube channel that's linked to Riverside. It's just nowhere. I don't know.
All right, I've got this thing now. It says fix the tab slowing your browser. Fix this tab or dismiss.
Dismiss.
Yeah, it's at 73%, which is what we've been running recently.
Oh, anyway, so England got lucky against Croatia, it looks like. I see in the papers.
Oh, did they? I didn't even, sadly, I don't even know what the score was. Did we won then?
4-2, I think.
All right, so plenty of goals.
Yeah, but Scotland are the big news in the World Cup because their Tartan Army fans are being welcomed and loved everywhere they go.
Oh, are they?
They just turned the place into a party. They clean up after themselves. They had a big massive party in a park in Boston or somewhere, and they picked up all their litter before they left, thousands of them, and buggered off and left it as clean as it was when they arrived. The park keepers were going, never seen anything like this. These guys are welcome anytime.
Well, well done, Scottish fans. Proves it can be done.
Also, they went to a baseball game and the baseball players were just confused because the singing and the chanting, he could walk 500 miles and I can walk 5. And they just went the whole game. And American fans sit there eating chicken nuggets. They don't say anything.
No, they have hot dogs. I don't think they have chicken nuggets.
They actually have tables and chairs in the front rows in their stadiums where they sit down and eat fucking dinner while watching a game. It's ridiculous. But they'd never seen anything like the Scottish fans. People singing and dancing and standing on the chairs the whole way through the game.
Excellent.
Really teaching them how to enjoy sports.
Yeah. Yes. We do know how to enjoy sports in England. Not that I'm a great sports person, I have to say.
Of course, Donald Trump comes up with a great idea to ruin it for everybody. He has managed to inveigle his way into handing over the World Cup to the winning team.
That's a recipe for disaster. Maybe the winning team won't accept it.
He won't let it go.
That's right.
It's gold, for God's sake.
He grabbed something not so long ago.
He's a fucking magpie. A surprise! I gotta get that.
So
Wanker. What the fuck has football got to do with him? Just fuck off.
he prefers UFC.
He's got no idea. No idea
About
at all.
anything. His pond has done very well. All it is in the press is pictures of the algae-ridden pond that he spent however million on.
7.
Poor fellow. Now you've got to feel
Mental.
sorry for the poor fellow, really. Now, actually,
No.
he's just a doddery old man, and he needs to.
Yeah, well, let's
put
just
out
hope
his
he just
misery.
dies then. Just die. Get it done.
Yes, so there's the World Cup that started. That's quite exciting news. Not. Though I suppose, I don't know what proportion of the population do follow soccer. I suppose it's one of the bigger sports. Has to
It
be,
is
actually,
the biggest sport in the world.
in terms of fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's played literally across the world, unlike the World Series in baseball, where it's
Which
only-
is played in the America.
Yeah, and I think actually, I don't even know whether Japan play in the World Series baseball, if that is it.
No.
They don't. It is.
No,
literally
it's
just
only
for-
American teams.
Yeah, yeah,
That way they guarantee that America wins it.
yeah, yeah. No, so that's going on. We've got. I can't work out if we've got a peace deal or not, because Trump keeps saying, "Yeah, but if they misbehave, we don't."
I'm
have
going
a
to
deal."
drop bombs on their heads. On their heads.
How they could be willing to actually publish the terms of the deal, bearing in mind it's so much worse than that Obama negotiated without dropping a single bomb.
I mean, it's basically America surrenders to Iran.
Yes.
But we've got to come out of it looking like we didn't. But they can't, because everything is a concession.
A $300 billion.
I told you they've got to rebuild Tehran. You blew it up, you rebuild it. Fucking
And
right.
what's even more incredible is that I think the terms and conditions as far as the nuclear side of things are actually weaker than they were under Obama's thing.
Yeah, because they've lost. They've been beaten roundly in the theatre of war, and now they have to fucking just get out of it before it becomes too obvious, even to their most faithful followers.
Yes, I have a feeling that fellow Hegseth is not long for this world in terms of his position as Minister of War.
Minister of War. Fucking pathetic. Worst war ever.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
And he still carries on. Oh, if they don't do as we say, they're going to drop more bombs on their heads.
Yeah.
He's such a fucking waste of space, that man.
Yes, he is indeed. And what else? Oh, there's an important by-election in the UK today.
Is there?
Yeah. Do you remember that fellow Andy Burnham?
Oh, that fucking wanker, war criminal, Blair-loving hypocrite. Fuck him. And Starmer has already said, oh, well, you know what? If he gets in, I'm going to offer him a cabinet position because I don't want him to challenge me.
No, I don't think that's going to happen. But anyway, so yes, the by-election is happening today that will allow Andy Burnham back into Parliament as an MP, which will allow him to challenge for the leadership when he chooses to.
Yeah, but as I say, Starmer's going to try and head him off because he knows his days are numbered.
Well, it's probably the only by-election that we're going to see where Keir Starmer is probably hoping Reform wins.
Yeah.
Do you know people don't even
honest,
talk about Conservatives anymore?
To be honest, I hope Reform wins because I don't want Burnham. He's going to be actually even worse than Starmer.
Yeah, but he's not worse than Farage, please.
No one is worse than Starmer.
No.
No one.
No, you see, this is where it's lucky I'm going live because I'm tempted to turn off the microphone at this stage.
No one is worse than... Do you see what he's doing now? He's basically eradicating the freedom of speech of everybody in the country.
Where does this idea come from? What are you talking about?
He's banning social media for under 16s, and the way to prove your age is by scanning your face and having an ID, a national ID.
Well, what's that got to do with freedom of speech?
Because even if you're, well, especially if you're over 16, you still have to prove it. So they are basically scanning everybody's face in the country.
Well, you know that's just complete nonsense.
It's not complete nonsense.
Of course it is.
It's not.
It is. Firstly, I can give you an example. If you've had an account with Twitter or something for more than 16 years with a credit card attached to it, you don't have to prove anything because the account...
Oh, yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. You do.
I was listening to it yesterday. You don't. So there's all sorts of measures.
There is going to be automatically child lock on every fucking account, and you have to get past that by proving who you are. And the only way to prove who you are is by providing some form of ID.
I was listening to an interview yesterday.
Otherwise,
complaining.
how can you ban it if you've got no ID?
Look, I was listening to a guy being interviewed yesterday on the radio, and he was saying, but the whole point of being on the internet is to be anonymous. How can I go out trolling people and getting into a good argument with someone if they can actually track me down? That's the whole point of the internet.
No, the whole point is so we can track you down.
He's one of your mates.
No. Sorry, but it's wrong. It's wrong. They're trying to absolutely bring in fucking mandatory ID through the back door. That's all they're trying to do. And also, now the British taxpayer are subsidising French heating bills.
Well, they've been doing that for years.
Apart from the fact that French own all our electricity companies anyway, we're now contributing towards their energy costs.
Why are you changing the subject? But what are you talking about now? What's this? What are you talking about?
It was in yesterday's paper. Made me so mad.
When you say yesterday's paper, you're talking about the Sun or the Daily Mail, aren't you?
Oh, it's all I've got.
Exactly. It's like, did that idiot Robert Jenrick was talking about killing donkeys on Dartmoor yesterday. Did you hear that?
No.
He was saying how outrageous it was. The Labour Party want to cull 90% of wild donkeys on Dartmoor, and it was just complete and utter nonsense. There was just not an element of truth to any of the story, and it was started by Badenoch, Conservative. It's just that they don't know what they're talking about. Come on then, come on. It's why are we subsidising the French? You can't.
It's
find
obviously,
it now,
it's
can you?
clearly not in today's paper.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. That's a shame, isn't it? That when I actually ask you your source.
Yeah, but if you actually sometimes opened up anything rather than the BBC, you might actually see some of this stuff for yourself.
Some of this complete nonsense.
There's nothing like complete nonsense to get the blood boiling in the morning.
That's what's so sad. I try not to do it, but I get wound up as well.
Hello, mate. You coming up?
But
There we go.
luckily not to the extent that you do.
Now I have a cat's arse in my face.
Yeah, it's probably what you deserve.
Anyway, this day, because we've got to rush through this now because of you. Today in history, in the year of 1812, what do you think happened?
Oh, I don't know. When was the blowing up of Houses of Parliament?
The clue is in the year.
1812 Overture, Beethoven.
It was when James Madison signed a declaration of war against Great Britain.
Why is there a clue in the date of 1812?
Because it was the War of 1812.
It's not a clue.
The conflict, which exploded due to tensions over trade and westward expansion, endured for about 2.5 years and ended with the Treaty of Ghent in 1815, which largely restored pre-war borders and relations,
Yes.
while initiating a nearly uninterrupted status quo of peace and cooperation between the US and Great Britain that has persisted ever since,
Yeah.
except lately. Also, in 1815, the year that ended, the Battle of Waterloo took place on this day, where Napoleon,
and
the Duke of Wellington,
Duke of Wellington, of course, Wellington Boots. He's our man.
and also Field Marshal Gebhard Leberecht
Never heard
of
of him.
Prussia.
Never heard of him. Who's Prussia?
Well, you know, Russia, really.
Russia, Germany, Austria.
Took place in present-day Belgium. During the battle,
exciting. Yeah.
Napoleon was defeated and subsequently exiled to the island of St. Helena, where apparently I think he died.
Sorry, what? The Battle of Waterloo happened in Belgium?
Yeah.
No.
Where do you think it happened? Waterloo Station
I don't think anything ever exciting happened in Belgium.
or Waterloo Station? Can you get off? Get off! Oh, you're ruining it. Now, this was a real tragedy in Dublin, and I think we've actually done a story on this before, where a fire broke out at Malone's Malt House and Bonded Storehouse in Dublin, which held apparently 5,000 barrels of whiskey. Do you remember talking about it?
No, actually.
I do. The blaze caused burning whiskey. God, get off my keyboard! Caused burning whiskey to pour through the city streets, where it was mostly lapped up by locals. The so-called whiskey fire killed 13 people who drank too much of the burning booze.
What you mean, so no one actually died in the fire?
No, they died of alcohol poisoning.
You can't. I'll tell you what, you'd have to be pretty determined to lap up whiskey.
Listen, in 1815 or whenever it was, 1875, there was a lot of unemployment, you know. If the only chance to get a drink was to get on your hands and knees and lap it up amongst the sewage that's dribbling down the street, then so be it.
Yeah.
And the youngest daughter of the deposed last Russian emperor, Anastasia Romanov, was born on this day in 1901.
Now, we have done a story about her, haven't we?
We have. She was included in our Rasputin trilogy, which it was a two-parter that turned into a trilogy that turned into a season
5 episode.
that turned...
Anastasia's a very nice name.
She was a beautiful little girl, actually. And she was born near St. Petersburg in Russia, youngest daughter of Nicholas The first, or the second, actually.
I'll tell you what, in those days, I bet they didn't imagine that Ukraine would actually be sending bombs over to St. Petersburg.
No, they didn't imagine much of what was happening today, I would imagine.
And in fact, I was reading that Ukraine are able to send things as far as Moscow now. They've been destroying fuel depots in Moscow area.
Yeah, but where did you hear that nonsense? I don't believe it. It's just fake news.
I mean, it's been widely reported.
It's all fake news. It's phony stuff.
Can you get
It
off?
didn't happen. It's all fake news.
Jesus,
why you
come
say
on,
that.
off. He's closed all my windows. Just go away. God damn.
Are you hoping that the cat content increases our YouTube watcher viewership because of cats?
Honestly, he's being such a pain. He's normally never even up here when I'm recording. This is Reggie. It's normally Ronnie who causes all the problems.
Maybe you can title this this thing "Cat Destroys Podcast."
On this day in 2026.
Come on, what else happened in this history? I don't even know what the date is. Is it the 18th of June?
It's the 18th. Alan Berg, you know who he is? Well, he was gunned down in Denver, apparently. He was an outspoken and confrontational radio host, and in 1984, he was killed by the members of the white supremacist group, The Order, who disliked his abrasive interview style and the fact that he was Jewish. That's it. That's all that's happened in the whole of history on this day.
Well, that's not very exciting, is it?
Except what we're going to talk about today also happened on this day and many other days, though. It wasn't basically limited to today. It went on for centuries.
That is probably the weakest segue. 249 episodes. What? And this happened on this day, and in fact every other day for the last 100 years.
And almost is still happening. And of course, I'm talking about the real pandemic.
Oh, God. It's lucky you're not doing this live, or I'd have to switch off.
No, this is the real pandemic, because no pandemic in history was as deadly as the Black Plague.
Oh, I was going to say the Spanish flu. So the Black Plague killed more than the Spanish flu?
Yeah, from the Middle Ages right up until the 1750s. The bubonic plague decimated Europe and the Middle East, wiping out an estimated 30 million people in the first decade alone.
And compared to the population, it was...
Fucking hell, that was like half the world's population. The devastation was so great that Renaissance poet Petrarch, who observed the plight from Florence, wrote, "Happy posterity, who will not experience such abysmal woe and will look upon our testimony as a fable." Well, I'm glad he made some money out of it. But the plague did eventually subside, sometime around 1352 or 53, reappearing in fragmented pockets every 10 to 20 years until the 18th century.
I was going to say, when was Thomas à Becket alive?
Oh, that was the time
Henry
of,
VIII.
sort of
1580s,
1580s, thereabouts.
1580s. Because, what was that? There was a very famous book that came out about 10 years ago, a historical sort of book. And what was most shocking about that was, in fact, I think it was him or a very senior, well-known figure, went away for a week or something to... Actually, I was impressed. He went to the Netherlands or something on business, came back a week later, and his family had been wiped out. And it was just
Yeah, it could be very quick.
just the absolute shock of suddenly family's gone.
And of course,
due to the Black Plague.
Of course, he didn't have an iPhone, so nobody could let him know.
No, exactly. No. Francis Bacon.
So, Francis Bacon, or as we like to call him, William Shakespeare.
He was around the same... I can't remember the name of the book. I have to try and work it out.
I have to get on because you're putting me under time limits.
Oh dear, all right, I'll stop talking.
So how did the Black Plague end? And did it ever really disappear? Or are we simply biding our time until there's a comeback? So the course of the Black Plague in the 14th century... Got to hurry up my thing a bit. Otherwise known as the Black Death or bubonic plague, the Black Plague remains the most deadly pandemic in world history. Experts believe that the name Black Plague was actually a mistranslation of the Latin word atra mors, which could mean either terrible or black. So it was originally estimated that on average a third of the world's population of affected areas was wiped out by the plague over its most destructive decade between 1346 and 1353. But other experts think that closer to or even half of the entire continent of Europe's population perished. Plague victims suffered excruciating pain.
Don't want to hear the details.
But you're going to have to. Their symptoms began with fever and boils. A victim's lymph nodes would swell as their body fought the infection, and their skin would become strangely blotched before they began to vomit blood. At that stage, the victim typically died within 3 days. Italian chronicler Agnolo di Tura described the grisly aftermath as the Black Plague in his hometown of Tuscany. In many places in Siena,
We don't need to do a bloody pizza chef voice. This is a serious subject.
great pits were dug and piled deep with the multitude of the dead. And there were also those who were so sparsely covered with earth that the dogs dragged them out and devoured many bodies throughout the city. Ditura himself had to bury his 5 children because of the plague. It must have been a really bad time.
So what proportion of the population died, did you say, in Europe?
Half.
It was 50%.
Early researchers initially thought the Black Plague began somewhere in China, but that's just the ye old Daily Sun that probably spread that rumour. But more research has shown that it most likely formed in the steppe region of Eastern Europe and Central Asia. But again, I don't trust any of this research.
Well, that is basically China, for God's sake.
The first spread of the disease began, according to plague historian Ole J. Benediktov, in the autumn of 1346, when the Tatar Mongols attacked the city of Kaffa in Crimea. During the siege, the Mongols catapulted plague-ridden corpses into Kaffa, effectively infecting the entire city, including the hundreds of Italian merchants who had come for trade. And in the spring, the Italians fled back home, carrying the disease on flea-ridden rats aboard the ships with them. So by early July 1347, the Black Plague had broken out all over Europe.
So hang on, the Black Plague was actually carried by fleas on the back of rats?
Yes, that's pretty much common knowledge from school days. I'm surprised that you're surprised.
No, but when did it become human to human?
I think once it's transmitted once you get bitten by a flea from an infected rat, then you are infected and you can infect other humans.
Because that's what they always talk about, when it becomes human to human transmission.
Yeah, I think the human has to have it transmitted to them first before they can become transmissible. You can't just catch it from being in the vicinity of a flea-infested rat. You have to be bitten by one of those fleas.
All right.
It quickly spread to Africa and the Middle East due to overseas trading and also the growing density of cities. Now, tracing the plague's origins and spread was doable enough, but determining how it ended is another story entirely. We know how it finished in England, well, in London at least, but the plague has affected humans for over 4,000 years, but very little is known about the virulent disease.
What is the virulent disease?
Bubonic plague.
So it's actually called bubonic plague. Yeah.
Europe saw the worst of the Black Plague for nearly 10 years before the disease began to subside, but it still returned every decade or so up until the 18th century, and although it was never quite as deadly as it was in the 14th, it still came back. The Great Plague of London in 1665 is often considered the last major outbreak of the disease, and we know why, though there are reports of the disease in Western Europe as late as 1721. Also, the Black Plague did continue to infect Russia and the Ottoman Empire well into the 19th century. And to this day, as I say, nobody knows exactly why or how the Black Death finally came to end, but experts have a few compelling theories. Some experts posit that the biggest possible reason for the plague's disappearance was simply modernization. People previously thought the plague was divine punishment for your sins, which often led to ineffective remedies that were grounded in mysticism. Alternatively, devout worshippers who didn't want to go against God's will stood idly by while the disease swept their homes. But with advancements in medical science, better leeches, and a better understanding of bacterial diseases, there emerged new treatments, of course.
So yes, when did they start treating bubonic plague?
We'll get to that. But as I said, in 1665 was the last great outbreak in London, and we know why that was, because that was the year before the Great Fire of London, which would have cleansed it entirely.
I was going to say, there was definitely a cleansing effect.
So indeed, the plague became an impetus for significant developments in medicine and public health regulation. People started to do cocaine about it. Scientists of the time turned to dissection, of course, because cut it out, the study of blood circulation, and even sanitation to find ways to combat the spread of the disease. The phrase quarantine, in fact, was coined during the outbreak of the Black Plague in Venice in the early 15th century. Historically, however, the policy was only first implemented by the Republic of Ragusa, which is present-day Dubrovnik in Croatia, in 1377, when the city shut its borders for 30 days. Others suggest that the plague subsided due to the genetic evolution of human bodies and bacteria itself. The reality, though, is that there's still much to be learned about the Black Plague and how it finally subsided. The Black Plague wasn't the first major plague to besiege the world, nor will it be the last. During the 6th century, a major plague broke out in the Eastern Roman Empire, which later became known as the First Plague Pandemic. The Black Plague, which followed a few centuries later, was thus known as the Second Plague Pandemic. And after that, another plague hit Central and Eastern Asia between 1855 and 1959, known as the Third Plague Pandemic, and this killed 12 million people.
So are we still not talking about the Spanish flu?
No, because we're talking about the plague. It's got nothing to do with the Spanish flu.
All right.
3 different types of plagues have been identified by scientists: bubonic, pneumonic, and septicemic. And the Black Death is an example of bubonic, which has affected humans for at least 4,000 years. Victims of bubonic plague form tender lymph nodes, or buboes, that leave spots of the body blackened due to internal hemorrhaging, and it's caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, which can be found in wild rodents, mostly rats, that have been infected by disease-carrying fleas. And today, the Black Death can be treated simply with antibiotics. As of 2019, parts of the world still experience plagues, and most commonly bubonic plague. Roughly 7 cases of the plague are reported each year in the US. The disease has only appeared in the western part of the country so far. Outside of the US, Africa has been hit the hardest by the plague in modern times. In 2017 and 2018, Madagascar experienced a devastating outbreak of pneumonic plague, a form which spreads rapidly between humans. Thousands of infections and hundreds of deaths occurred.
In Madagascar?
Yeah.
Right.
Other parts of the world, such as Central Asia and parts of South America, are also still infected by minor outbreaks annually. Deaths from the plague are now certainly not comparable to the nearly 100 million people killed by the plague over the centuries. But still, our lack of understanding of this persistent disease is cause for concern. As award-winning biologist David Markman noted, a plague is a disease of animals, and as humans encroach further on the habitats of wildlife, it becomes more likely that disease spreads between us. And for all we know, the next major plague could be lurking just around the corner. So the Black Death being the deadliest epidemic of bubonic plague in history, wiping out some 25 million Europeans alone in just a few years. Out of desperation, cities hired a new breed of physician. This is my favourite bit of the story now. Who were either Second-rate physicians, you can imagine how bad they would have been, young physicians with limited experience, or physicians who actually had no certified medical training at all. What was important, the only qualification you required, was that the plague doctor was willing to venture into plague-stricken areas and count the numbers of the dead. After more than 250 years fighting the plague, hope did finally arrive with the invention of the 17th century equivalent of a hazmat suit.
And what was this one with a peaky front, like a beak?
Yes. Unfortunately, it didn't really work very well.
What was the idea of the big beak?
I'm going to tell you. The uniform was designed to protect a doctor from contamination. The primary responsibilities of the plague doctor were not to cure or treat, remember. Their duties were administrative and laborious, as they basically kept track of casualties of the Black Death, assisted in the occasional autopsy, or witnessed wills for the dead and dying. Unsurprisingly, this meant that some plague doctors, of course, took advantage of their patients' finances and ran off with their final will and testament. More often than not, though, these bookkeepers of the plague were revered and sometimes even held for ransom. They were hired and paid for by local municipalities, and plague doctors saw to everybody, regardless of their economic status, although they did occasionally invent their own cures and tinctures, which they included with a fee to wealthier patients. So the old snake oil salesman was even around then.
Absolutely.
It was not immediately obvious to doctors and victims alike how exactly the plague spread, of course. And by the time of the 17th century, though, physicians had subscribed to the miasma theory, which was the idea that contagion spread through foul-smelling air. Prior to this time, plague doctors wore a variety of protective suits, but it wasn't until 1619 that a uniform was invented by Charles Delorme. The chief physician to Louis Delorme described the plague doctor costume like so. The nose is half a foot long, shaped like a beak and filled with perfume. Under the coat, we wear boots made in Moroccan leather, goat leather, and a short-sleeved blouse in smooth skin. The hat and the gloves are also made of the same skin, with spectacles over the eyes. Now, because they believed that smelly vapours could catch in the fibres of their clothing and transmit disease, Delorme designed a uniform of a waxed leather coat, leggings, boots and gloves intended to deflect miasmas from head to toe. The suit was then coated in suet, which is basically hard white animal fat, to repel bodily fluids. The plague doctor also donned a prominent black hat to indicate they were in fact a plague doctor.
They weren't too far from the truth, actually. I mean, they had a pretty,
More by luck than skill, they did protect themselves a little bit, but the beak filled with perfume was way off the mark. The doctor carried a long wooden stick, which he used to communicate with his patients. You were there! You were there! Examine them and occasionally ward off the more desperate and aggressive ones. By other accounts, patients believed the plague to be a punishment sent from God, and they requested the plague doctor whip them in repentance. Foul-smelling air was also combated with sweet herbs and spices like camphor, mint, cloves and myrrh, stuffed into a mask with the bird-like beak. Sometimes the herbs were set alight before they were put in the mask, so that the smoke could further protect the plague doctor.
I'm surprised they didn't bloody pass out and suffocate these poor people.
Oh, God knows what they were doing under that coat. I'm sure there were some that found it very entertaining. They also wore these round glass goggles, a hood, and leather bands tethered the goggles and the mask tightly to the doctor's head. So beside the sweaty and horrifying exterior, the suit was deeply flawed in that it had air holes poked into the beak. As a result, many of the doctors contracted the plague anyway and died. Though Delorme was lucky enough to live to an impressive 96 years old, most plague doctors had a very short lifespan, even with the suit, and those who didn't get sick often lived in constant quarantine. Indeed, it could be a lonely and thankless existence for the plague doctors of yore.
I wonder how many people actually recovered from the plague.
Well, not that many, obviously, looking at the mortality rates. Because doctors treating the bubonic plague were confronted only with the horrific symptoms and not an in-depth understanding of the disease, they were often allowed to conduct autopsies. These, however, tended to yield nothing. Plague doctors consequently resorted to some dubious, dangerous and debilitating treatments. As I said earlier, they were largely unqualified. So they had less medical knowledge than real physicians who knew nothing and who themselves subscribed to incorrect scientific theories. Treatments then ranged from the bizarre to the truly horrific. They practiced covering the buboes, or the pus-filled cysts, which were the size of eggs, found on the neck, armpits and groin, in human shit, which probably spread further infection. They also turned to bloodletting, of course, and the lancing of the buboes to drain the pus. Both practices quite painful, although the most painful was probably when they poured mercury over the victim and placed them in the oven.
It's just
These are your experts that you revere so highly.
experts in the 1600s, Andy.
Yeah, there's no difference. We haven't progressed. They're still
No,
the
you're
same
right.
fucking
We
bumbling
still put
idiots.
patients in the oven. Yeah.
Yeah, except now they call it an MRI machine and they radiate you instead of cooking you. So not surprisingly, these attempts often accelerated death and the spread of infection by opening, festering burn wounds and blisters. Fucking medicine, man. Today, we know that the bubonic plague and subsequent plagues like pneumonia were caused by the bacteria Yersinia pestis, which was carried by the rats and was quite common in urban settings. The last urban outbreak of plague in the US occurred in LA in 1924, and we've since found a cure in common antibiotics. So this early hazmat suit and those horrific treatments remain thankfully in the past, but the willingness of plague doctors to separate the sick from the healthy, to burn the contaminated and to experiment with treatments has not been lost on history. In Venice, this is the last segment of the whole episode, by the way, in case you're starting to panic.
No, but I'm just, I don't know why you're so surprised at the type of treatment. They didn't know anything. They were flying. Most people just didn't have a clue what they were doing.
Yes, but if someone told me, I'm not a qualified doctor, but I reckon if you cover that wound with your own shit, it can't do any harm,
But when you say,
I would question that.
no, but in the 1600s, how many bloody qualified doctors were there?
I don't care. I would question anyone who tells me to shit in my own wounds.
I'll tell you what, I don't think you would be in a position. I'll tell you what, if you were suffering from that and you had those nasty pustules or whatever you call it, all over your body, you'd be wanting to believe anything.
Oh, if you say so.
You're going to be lying there at death. Oh, I don't like that idea. Is that what you're going to be saying?
No, because I don't speak like that. I would say you can shit in your own wound, mate, and fuck off out of my hovel.
You wouldn't be talking like that if you were on the bed, Andy, I can tell you.
In the Venetian lagoon, because if you've been to the Venice, you know there's a lagoon, sits Poveglia Island, which is a small, unpopulated landmass cut down the middle by a canal. And for all its unassuming appearance, however, it has a dark history and is said to be one of the most haunted places in Europe. A continent which is saturated with tales of ghosts and the paranormal.
I think
And many
the
of
Hotel
these...
Cipriani is there, which is one of the nicest hotels in Venice.
Yes, and it's within sight of St Mark's Square as well.
That's right, across the water, yeah.
Now, many of these ghosts come courtesy of the Black Death, which swept through Europe, as we know, in the 14th century, killing off millions and cutting the entire population of some cities in half in a matter of months or even weeks. And the bubonic plague did not stop after the famous outbreak of 1348.
I
Instead,
still can't get over the fact that you read these things and you're talking about literally half a city dies in the space of a few weeks or months, and you're going to be lying there complaining whether you have a qualified doctor to treat you or not.
Yes.
You
I want the best medical care available, not the bloke who was thrown out of the butcher shop because he didn't know how to cut a chop. Instead, it reappeared again and again for centuries. Now, in Venice, which was at the time Europe's dominant trading port during the late Middle Ages and the Renaissance, officials took advantage of the Venetian lagoon's islands to isolate and manage its plague outbreaks. So for centuries, Poveglia Island was Venice's solution to the plague, an isolated quarantine site where victims of the plague were sent after infection, with few ever leaving the island again. Now, this island is just 17 acres, but it housed over 160,000 plague victims through the centuries, and officials did more than just quarantine the sick and soon to die. They burned the corpses to stop the spread of the disease, and it is said that human ash from these cremations make up more than 50% of the island's soil even centuries later. It sounds a bit like hell,
I think
just
that's
in northern Italy.
That's a bit of an exaggeration. Come on.
160,000 people.
Yeah, 160,000. I can do it on my calculator. Carry on. I'll do it on my calculator.
Now, the Venetian lagoon itself houses 166 islands, including a small island directly south of the St. Mark's Square area known as Poveglia Island.
That's only 16,000 tons.
This small dot of land has housed people since at least the 5th century, when Romans escaped Goth and Hun invasions by fleeing to more defensible islands in the lagoon. As Venice grew into a major power, Poveglia became an important defensive location. In the 14th century, the Venetians built a fort on the island, establishing an outpost that could destroy enemy ships that tried to reach the city of Venice. But when the plague ravaged Europe, Poveglia Island became the quickest and eventually permanent solution to the outbreak. It became an important quarantine site for plague victims as early as the 16th century. In addition to quarantining victims on the island, it also became a gigantic mass grave for the corpses of the dead, and barges from Venice hauled the dead to the island, while smaller ships brought exiles from the city who showed even the mildest symptoms of the plague, so you didn't dare sneeze out on the streets in those days. On the island, plague victims spent 40 days waiting to see if they would die or recover. Most died. The Venetians cremated untold thousands of bodies, leaving the ashy remains of plague victims to fall where they may.
640 tons.
When the deadliest outbreak of bubonic plague struck Europe in 1348, Venice created the first modern quarantine system. The Republic detained ships and travellers suspected of carrying the plague for a period of 40 days, and the word quarantine itself comes from the Italian quaranta, or 40.
40? Is that right? Now that is interesting. I've actually learned something mildly interesting, that quarantine comes from the word 40.
There you go. And we're only an hour into the podcast.
Well done.
Now, although plague quarantines were largely ineffective, the desperate need to stop the spread of the disease drove other areas to adopt the practice. And during the reappearance of the bubonic plague in 1374, the Duke of Milan exiled all plague sufferers to a field outside the city. On the Dalmatian coast, Ragusa created a quarantine station to isolate people from plague-ravaged areas. Marseille created a maritime quarantine in the early 16th century, while 17th century Frankfurt banned anyone living in a plague-afflicted house from attending public gatherings. In colonial New York, the city council set up a quarantine station on the island that now houses the Statue of Liberty. The Black Death devastated Venice's population in 1348, killing half its citizens, And as Venice was a hub for international trade, it welcomed ships from around the known world, making the island republic especially susceptible to the spread of the disease. And as bubonic plague ravaged Europe for centuries, Venice responded by creating a network of lazaretti, or plague quarantine stations, on the islands of the lagoon. And Poveglia became the most important of these inspection ports by the 18th century. In 1485, Venice's ruler, Giovanni Mocenigo, died from another outbreak of the plague, which spurred the city to create several quarantine colonies on isolated islands. When plague struck the town, everybody sick or showing any suspect symptoms were restricted on the island until they recovered or died. On Lazaretto Vecchio, an island northeast of Poveglia, the number of corpses soon overwhelmed the city's capacity to bury them, and archaeologist Vincenzo Gobbo said about 500 people a day used to die on Lazaretto Vecchio, and we simply had no time to take care of the burials. It looked like hell, wrote 16th century chronicler Rocco Benedetto. The sick lay 3 or 4 in a bed. When plague victims died, they were thrown into mass graves. Workers collected the dead and threw them in the graves all day without a break. Often, the dying ones and the ones too sick to move or talk were taken for dead and thrown onto the corpses. From the 16th century on, Poveglia Island housed plague victims, and there many breathed their last and were cremated or buried in mass graves. But the island became even more important in Venice's epidemic protection plans and prevention plans in the 18th century. In 1777, Venice's Magistrate of Health turned Poveglia Island into its primary plague checkpoint, so that any ship sailing into Venice had to stop there first for an inspection. And if any sailor showed signs of the plague, Venice quarantined them on Poveglia. Poveglia Island remained a quarantine site until 1814, and owing to its haunting legacy as the city's go-to quarantine station for the plague, Venetians began calling the island of Ghosts. Adding to the dark history, in 1922, Venetians transformed the island by building a mental hospital. Naturally, rumours soon spread that a doctor at the hospital carried out morbid experiments on his patients, only for the doctor to reportedly die after falling from a bell tower on the island.
What was he doing up a bell tower?
Probably ringing the bell to plague, plague, ding, ding. The hospital closed its doors, and you won't believe this, in 1968.
We were alive.
Yeah. Leaving Poveglia Island once again abandoned. And now, not surprisingly, stories of plague victims and now, of course, abused psychiatric patients haunting Poveglia continue to this day. In 2014, Venice unsuccessfully tried to auction off the island, but the deal fell through and the island's status remains in limbo.
Oh, I see. So it is empty. It's still uninhabited. So
Yeah.
I was talking nonsense about the hotel being there.
So today, the Island of Ghosts is completely off limits to visitors. But why anyone would want to visit such a place in the first place is anybody's guess.
No, but you're the sort of person who would pay, wouldn't you? A day trip to the Ghost Island. That's the sort of thing you'd sign up for straight away.
I mean, that sounds like a bargain.
You'd get your beak costume out, stuff your nose full of strange herbs.
No, I would use Hugo Boss. Anyway, that's all I've got. That's the history and...
The other thing that came to mind is you used the word lazarette.
No, I did not.
Yes, you did.
No,
Several times.
it was Lazetta or something. It was an island near Poveglia. I'm not going to go back to my script now.
No.
But I understand what you. I understand what you were. No, it was an island. It was the name of an island.
Oh, I see. So it wasn't like
It wasn't
the
lazarette.
word for hospital in Swedish.
No,
All right.
no. I knew what you were alluding to because I'm used to the way your mind doesn't work.
I mean, as I say, I think it's just incomprehensible. Just think how you reacted to the COVID, as you describe it, non-pandemic, just think what you would have been. Oh, it's all nonsense. It's all fake news.
Well,
when
no,
you're
because
sitting
the
there with
person
your
I
great
was
big
saying that
pustules on your
to,
head.
the person I would be saying that to in the pub would die in front of me while I was saying that. Because
you
that
might
was a
believe
real
it.
pandemic. That's what a pandemic is, when you do have bodies in the streets piling up.
That's what you need, is it? In your
Yes.
mind, in
Yes.
2026.
That's what they
bodies piling
promised
up in
us.
the street.
That's what they promised us. Bodies in the streets, they promised. What happened? Nothing. Anyway, that
So that
sadly,
was the Black Death, the bubonic plague. Well, that's
Yes.
a nice, happy episode. Well done, Andy. Good choice.
that was a good episode. That was
midsummer.
incredibly interesting and important stuff.
Remind me what I learnt.
You learned
Quarantine.
that quarantine comes from the word 40, because you were left there for 40 days to see if you died or not.
Do you think that had something to do with the Bible, why they chose 40 days?
No, it was probably because an expert said 30 days is not enough, 50 many.
And sorry, what was the thing, the reference to the States? The Statue of Liberty?
That was also where the Statue of Liberty stands now. That was a quarantine island.
All right. What's the island called?
I'm not telling you, because that means opening my script up again and you can fuck off. I'm not going through that nonsense. So thanks for listening, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. This was episode 249. So next week's episode is going to be the big 250, and I still haven't decided what we're talking about. Probably how my cats died.
Is that the tragic end to Rodney and Reggie?
Anyway, have yourselves a strange week.
Yep.
In the meantime, don't get the plague. If you do, go to Venice, spread it unconditionally and without reservation, because that's what they did to us in the Middle Ages. Dirty bastards.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll see you same time, same place next week. And if you're a Patreon, which you should be, it's actually half price at the moment to join.
Well, we didn't have a price. How can it be half price?
No, we do. We've got two prices,
Oh, I see.
but they've both been halved for 8 days or something. I pressed the button and it all went mental.
All right.
So I don't know. Anyway, jump in quick while you can, because it'll end soon. And there's another over 100 episodes to be played just from there. So your first month will be half price, and the rest of it will go to Apple Pay, according to the latest figures, what they're charging commission. So try not to use Apple Pay. But we'll see you same time, same place next week, or we'll see you on Wednesday on our Patreon. Bye for now.
Excellent. Cheerio.